There he sits, the blind beggar at the lich gate. Marry him this morning, or be out of my house by noon with what you can carry, and I shall tell the parish why." The woman's voice came from 10 feet off to Alaric's right, pitched to carry, which told him she meant to be overheard by more people than the one she was speaking to. Alaric Sarn, 5th Duke of Lanchester, did not move on his stone seat under the lich gate. He kept both hands folded on the head of his stick and turned his face a little toward the gravel path, and listened with the whole of his attention, which since Corunna was considerable. 3 people, the speaker, Silk, a heavy scent of orange flower water, a habit of shifting her weight so that her skirts hissed. A second woman, younger, breathing quick and shallow with the particular excitement of somebody enjoying a cruelty performed by another. And a third, standing very still on the path, whose only sound for a long moment was one indrawn breath. "Well," said the Silk, "have you nothing to say?" "I am thinking," said the third. Her voice was low and unhurried. There was no tremor in it that a stranger would have caught. Alaric caught it, a slight roughness at the ends of the words, the mark of somebody who had wept recently and at length, and did not intend to do it again in company. "Think faster. Mr. Dorney is at the vestry door with the register, and the curate has other business. Cutwood cannot house 2 unmarried women, Rosamond. Cecily is to be Lady Belisham in October, and I will not have your name whispered about in the same breath as hers." "My name," the third said, "has nothing whispered about it but what you put there yourself, ma'am." "Noon," said the Silk, "the blind man or the road." Skirts hissed away up the path. The excited breathing followed. And then it was very quiet in the churchyard, with the rooks going over and a bee somewhere in the lime blossom, and one person standing 8 feet from him, not moving at all. Alaric had come to sit at the lich gate of St. Clear's for the 3rd Tuesday running, in an old brown coat that had belonged to his father's gamekeeper, with his valet Rook waiting out of sight beyond the wall. He had done it because he had grown very tired of being told what his own county thought of him by men who were paid to tell him. He had discovered a useful fact in the first hour. A well-dressed blind man is a tragedy, and people speak to him in the careful voices used at sickbeds. A shabby blind man with a stick is furniture, and people speak in front of him as they truly are. He had learned a great deal in 3 Tuesdays. Nothing he had learned had prepared him for this. The footsteps came nearer. She stopped, he judged, at a proper distance, near enough to be heard, not near enough to crowd him. "Sir," she said, "you will have heard all of that." "Every word." "I am sorry for it. Whatever else, you should not have had to sit there and be discussed as though you were a gate-post." Alaric turned his face toward her and inclined his head. "It is not the first time. Sit down if you like. The stone is warm, the sun has been on it since 7. He heard her hesitate, and then the small sounds of a woman with a shabby gown seating herself carefully on a mounting stone opposite. Cheap stuff, worn thin, no rustle to it at all. "My name is Rosamond Peel," she said. "My father was rector here until March. The lady you heard is my stepmother. Cutwood is her house now and everything in it, and she is within her rights. And she has offered you a choice that is not one." "Yes." "Then I shall save you the trouble of asking," Alaric said. "The answer is no. You will not marry a stranger at a churchyard gate because a woman in orange flower water has set a clock going. Go into the town. There is a decent inn at the crossroads, the Fleece, and the woman who keeps it wants a hand with the accounts, and she is honest. Say that Sarn sent you, and she will give you a bed tonight without asking questions." There was a pause. "You know a great deal about the Fleece for a man who—" "For a man who begs at a lich gate," Alaric said. "Yes, say it. I am not made of glass, Miss Peel, and I would infinitely rather be spoken to plainly than tiptoed round. It is the one thing I cannot bear." "Very well." Something in her voice had changed. There was almost a smile in it. "You know a great deal about the fleece for a man in a gamekeeper's coat, and your boots have been made for you by somebody very good, and you say Sarn sent you as though it were a password. I noticed all 3 weeks ago, and I did not remark on it, because it seemed to me that a man sitting quietly at a gate has a right to his own business." Alaric found himself, for the first time in several years, entirely without a reply. "3 weeks ago," he said at last. "You have been here every Tuesday. You always face the path and not the sun, and you always know who is coming before they do." She said it matter-of-factly. "You knew my stepmother was 10 feet away and behind you, didn't you? You turned your head before she spoke." "The scent," he said, "and she treads on her heels." "Yes," said Rosamund Peel, "she does." Somewhere in the church, the curate opened a window. The bee went on working in the lime. "Miss Peel," Alaric said carefully, "I meant what I said. Take the road, not the beggar." "And what becomes of me on the road?" She said it without self-pity, as a matter of arithmetic. "I have £4.11, no character from any employer, and a stepmother who has told this parish for 2 years that I am wild, because it suits her that Cecily should look the steadier of us. I have written to 11 houses for a governess's place since March. 4 answered. 3 withdrew when they wrote to Cutwood for my character. A breath. The keeper of the fleece is honest, as you say. She will also be gone from that inn by Michaelmas, because her lease is out. I know because I read the notice on the church door, and nobody else in this parish reads notices." "You have thought about this?" "I have thought about nothing else for 4 months, sir. And this morning I stood on that path and I looked at the 2 things in front of me, and one of them was a woman who has made a sport of me since I was 15, and the other was a man who has sat at this gate for 3 Tuesdays and never once asked anybody for a penny." She stopped. Then, quieter, "You are not a beggar. You have never begged. I have watched Mrs. Yeo put bread in your hand, and I have watched you give it to the Hallow boy who mends nets. So I do not think I am choosing between ruin and charity. I think I am being offered a chance to be reckless in the one direction that is mine to choose." Alaric Sarn sat in the sun with his hands on his stick, and understood that he had lost control of the morning. "You do not know my name," he said. "You told my stepmother's back that Sarn sent you. That is not the same as knowing it." "No," Rosamund agreed. "Then here is what I know, and you may tell me if it is enough. You have a soldier's way of holding your shoulders. Your voice has been used to giving orders and has stopped. You are perhaps 40. You are courteous to people who are of no possible use to you, which in my experience is the whole of a man's character, and the rest is decoration." She paused. "And you have just spent 5 minutes trying to talk me out of the only thing that would benefit you, which is more than any man in this county has done for me since my father died." The church clock struck the half-hour. "Mr. Dorney is at the vestry door," said Rosamund Peel. "Will you marry me, sir? I will make you no promises I cannot keep. I will keep your house, whatever it is. I will read to you, and I read well, and I will not be one of those women who takes hold of your elbow in a doorway." Alaric rose and put out his hand, palm up, and waited, as he always waited, because a man who reaches for people is a man who will one day be flinched from. Her hand came into his. Cold, thin, ink on the fingers, a callus at the base of the thumb from a needle. "On one condition," he said. "There is a thing about me you do not know, and I will not tell it to you at this gate, because you would then be marrying it and not me. I will tell it to you tonight. And if, when you have heard it, you wish this morning undone, then I give you my word before God and Mr. Dorney that it shall be undone, and you shall have £300 settled on you regardless, and never see me again." That is a very strange condition. It is a very strange morning, said the 5th Duke of Lanchester, and closed his hand around hers. They were married at 11:15 with 2 witnesses, the curate's wife, and Rook, who had come in over the wall when he heard the vestry door and who said nothing whatever, though Alaric could hear him thinking loudly enough to rattle the windows. The stepmother arrived in time for the register. Alaric heard the orange flower water come up the aisle, heard the small, triumphant intake of breath, heard the murmur to the daughter, "Well, let her have her beggar." "Ma'am," Alaric said, without turning, "you will oblige me by wishing your stepdaughter joy." "Silence." "I beg your pardon." "You have a voice that carries," he said pleasantly, "and you have used it this morning in a churchyard to tell a rector's daughter that she is worth a stranger at a gate. I shall remember it for a long time. My memory is the one faculty I have had the leisure to perfect." He turned his head then, and let the silence go on exactly as long as he wanted it to. "Wish her joy." "I wish you joy," said the stepmother, in a voice like a door closing. "Thank you, ma'am," said Rosamond. They walked out through the lich-gate together. She did not take his elbow. She walked at his left with her arm brushing his half a pace ahead at the step down, which was the whole of the help he needed, and exactly the amount she gave, and he could not remember when anybody had got it right on the first attempt. At the end of the lane, there was a plain traveling carriage that Rook had brought round. "That is a very good carriage," said Rosamond, stopping. "Yes, for a beggar." "Mrs. Sarn," said Alaric, "will you get in, and let me tell you the thing I promised to tell you, and please do not say anything at all until I have finished, because I shall lose my nerve." They drove 11 miles. He talked for 9 of them. He told her that his name was Alaric Sarn, and that he was the 5th Duke of Lanchester, and that the house at the end of the road was called Lanchester Chase, and had 140 rooms, of which he used 9. He told her that he had gone blind at 3:30, not by a wound, but by a fever that took him in a Spanish billet after the retreat, over the course of about 5 weeks, long enough to know it was happening, and to be no use at stopping it. He told her that he had come home to a house full of people who lowered their voices, and a physician who had bled him, and a cousin who had begun writing to lawyers about a commission of lunacy, and that he had spent 2 years being managed. "And then," he said, "one morning I found that my steward had been reading me a rent roll for a year and a half in which the figures were his own invention. He was not a wicked man. He simply assumed, as everybody assumed, that I was no longer in the world." Alaric heard his own voice harden. "So I dismissed him, and I learned the estate again by another route. I have my letters read to me by 2 clerks separately, and I compare them. I ride with a leading rein on a bad day, and without one on a good one. I have every ledger read aloud to me twice a year, and I hold the whole of it in my head, which, as it turns out, is where my father held it too. And 3 Tuesdays ago I began sitting at the gate of St. Clear's in a gamekeeper's coat, because it is the only way left to me of hearing how my own parish speaks when it is not being careful." The carriage went over a cattle grid. He waited. "You wanted to know what they said about you," said Rosamond. "I wanted to know what they said about anything. A duke is never told the truth twice in one day. A blind duke is told it perhaps once a season, and always by somebody with a reason." He turned his face to her. "I did not sit at that gate to deceive you, but I did sit there, and you spoke to me as an equal for 3 Tuesdays without knowing, and this morning you married a man in a brown coat, and that is a deception whether I intended it or not. So, now you know it. You said you would make me no promises you could not keep. I made you one, and I hold to it. Say the word and it is undone. £300 and my carriage to wherever you name." The wheels ran on. Alaric Sarn sat in the dark he had lived in for 7 years and discovered that he was frightened, properly frightened, in the chest, for the first time since Spain. "Alaric," said his wife. "Yes." "Would you tell me what you thought," she said, "when my stepmother said marry him or be out by noon, in the moment, before you were courteous about it?" He had not expected that. He gave her the truth because there was nothing else left in the bag. "I thought somebody is being thrown away, 10 feet from me, and I am the rubbish heap they have chosen." His hands tightened on his stick. "And then you said I am thinking in that voice, and I thought, she is not going to break. And then you crossed the path and apologized to me, on the worst morning of your life because I had been discussed as though I were a gatepost." He stopped. "Nobody has apologized to me for that in 7 years, Rosamund. Everybody does it. Physicians, cousins, bishops. You noticed. That is when I stopped being able to send you to the fleece." There was a long silence, and then a small sound he could not place, and then her hand came over onto his on the head of the stick, and he understood that she was crying and had not wanted him to know. "I do not wish it undone," she said. "You have not seen the house. You may find 140 rooms an argument. I am the daughter of a man who left me £4 and 11 shillings and a great many books. I shall find 140 rooms very restful." She was laughing and weeping at once. "Alaric, I would have said no if you had told me at the gate. Do you understand that? If you had said I am the Duke of Lanchester, I would have run, because then it would have been a fairy tale and a trick, and I would not have believed a word of it. I married a man who tried to talk me out of it. That man exists. He is sitting here. Nothing you have told me alters one thing that I chose." Alaric Sarn turned his hand over under hers and held it. "Then there is one more condition," he said unsteadily, "and it is the last." "Name it." "Do not manage me." He heard the roughness in his own voice and let it stand. "Be my wife, be short with me. Tell me when I have my coat buttoned wrong, and tell me when I am being a fool with a tenant, and when I put out my hand, put yours in it. But do not take my arm in a doorway, and do not answer for me at a table, and do not tell people I am tired when what I am is angry. I have been kept for 7 years. I would rather be met." "Then I will meet you," said Rosamund Sarn. "And you may as well know that I have a temper, and no patience at all with cousins who write to lawyers, and that if I ever find a steward inventing figures at you, I shall take the ledger out of his hands myself, and read it to you in front of him." "Good," said the Duke of Lanchester, and lifted her hand, and kissed the ink-stained fingers one at a time, and the carriage turned in at the gates of the Chase. She was known in that county by the end of 2 years as the Duchess who read notices. She read the notices on church doors, and the lease terms, and every ledger of the estate allowed to her husband in the long room with 9 windows, in a low, unhurried voice, twice a year. And afterwards he would tell her the totals from memory, and she would check them and never once find him out. The lease of the fleece was renewed. The cousin who had written to lawyers received a letter, dictated by the Duke, copied by 2 clerks separately, which he did not answer. Cecily Varden became Lady Belisham in October and called at the Chase in November, and was received with perfect kindness, which she found unbearable. The stepmother was granted an annuity of £80 and a request that she not call at all, and Rosamund wept about that once, in the dark, and Alaric held her and did not tell her she was wrong too. There was never any cure. Alaric had made his peace with that before he ever sat down at the Lychgate, and his wife never once spoke of doctors, or of miracles, or of what a pity it was. What she did on their 10th anniversary was take him back to St. Clear's and sit him down on the same warm stone at the same hour, and put her hand into his open palm and say, "There, face the path, not the sun. Now tell me who is coming." Alaric Sarn turned his head and smiled and said, "You are. You always are. It is the only thing I have ever been certain of."